Today we're going to talk about our core leadership competency of flow for leaders and teams. So we're going to give you 5 pro tips where you as a leader can access flow for yourself and for your team.
Yeah, I love the 4% challenge because people are like, what the heck is a 4% challenge? And really fascinating research out there from DARPA with sharpshooters. When people were in flow, they learned twice as fast. So if you think about Malcolm Gladwell and 10,000 hours to become an expert, now you're cutting that to 5,000 hours, which is pretty incredible. And I think a lot of it has to do with this 4% challenge. So let's put some math to it. You know, if your body temperature is 98.6, 102.6 is 4 degrees. That's 4%. And that's the difference between normal day and a fever. So it's not just like, oh, I'm a little bit challenged. It's kind of right on your edge, right? Where you're pretty uncomfortable, but you also feel like, if I try, maybe I can do this, which is pretty cool. You know, take people out rock climbing for the first time and they're like, there's no way I can rock climb, to, okay, maybe I can. They're right on that edge and they hit flow and they get to practice it because of that 4% challenge. So if you're a leader, you know, if you give people, if you don't take the time to construct the task, the job description well, to tell people like what they need to do and challenge them, take them out of their comfort zone a little bit, they're just not going to be engaged, they're going to be bored, they're going to be looking on Facebook while they're at work. And if you say, hey, I need you to, you know, sell everything for the company, come up with a strategy and do all these things that aren't actually their job and they have no experience or education to actually do that, they're going to be, you know, scared, they're not going to have the psychological safety, they're going to be in that panic zone, and they're also not going to excel. So you want to be right in that sweet spot of stressing them out a little bit.
So it's Goldilocks, not too much overwhelmed, not too underwhelmed, but right in between is where we get the most engagement.
Yeah, exactly. And if you ask people, you know, are you engaged? Is this a good challenge for you? They'll tell you. Like, yeah, this is a great challenge, I'm totally into it, or I have no clue what I'm doing and I'm glad that you asked, or actually I could use a little more work. And so you can actually just ask.
So that first strategy or pro tip for leaders is to find that 4% challenge and skill match. Another pro tip for leaders to accessing flow for themselves and their team is clear goals. So we know that if people have in mind exactly what needs to be done, those metrics of success are set, and they have the framework of the broader organizational values and vision, that people are able to perform in a way that is driving towards that one clear outcome, and they don't get so distracted by all the other pulling priorities that seem to be important but are really not driving results towards that one thing that matters, that one objective goal that is going to make the difference between an organization succeeding or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think about climbing mountains. There's a clear goal in climbing a mountain, and sometimes it's painful, but often, I mean, we just did a 30-hour push, and most of it's just a blur because we had that clear goal, we're working as a team, we're moving toward the top, and we're just doing what we have to do to get there. But if we just went out and said, we're gonna walk aimlessly around this mountain for the next 30 hours, I think it would have been a different story. So having those, as a leader, saying like, this is what I need from you today. We have our priorities meeting where we talk about, here are my priorities for this week. Do those mesh with yours? Are we in sync with those? Okay, great. I have my goals. I have clear goals.
My priorities are your priorities, and we have that in sync so that they mesh up.
Yeah.
Totally.
So tip number 3 for accessing flow more often for yourself and for your team is immediate feedback. So I get the chance to do a lot of research at George Washington University about performance management. And you know, in the Navy, we had our annual evaluation. It was useless because I didn't even remember what I did for that year. And my boss definitely didn't remember what I did for that year. So I didn't have any clear feedback. I never knew until the end of the year with this piece of paper if I was doing well or not doing well. In the outdoors, that immediate feedback is always present. If you're mountain biking and you go off the trail a little bit, you know, you start to feel like you're gonna fall, you start to run into cactus, whatever it is, it's like, wow, I'm off the trail. And if you're on the trail, it feels great and it's rolling well. Same with climbing, same with all these activities. So we give people opportunities to go do these things, to practice, to understand that immediate feedback. Not as clear as a leader. Like, how do I give feedback? I think leaders often forget to give positive feedback. You know, we just keep pushing, great job, and keep moving, and not saying explicitly, what someone did well. And we often are uncomfortable giving critical feedback, and so people are left wondering, if they're doing a good job or not. Whereas if you make it a priority as a leader to go and give clear feedback, positive and critical, daily, at least weekly, like we do, mountains, valleys, streams, what are you doing well, what could you do better, where are you going next week, that takes 5 minutes each. And then you know where you stand, and you have that immediate feedback that leads to flow.
And I love that we're not just waiting and checking off a box every week or every year, that it's immediate, that we'll call each other on the phone and say, this is what's happening, this is where I need you to be. And that immediate feedback it takes work, it takes engagement, but it's ultimately driving results way faster than before we had that process.
Yeah, make it part of your culture, immediate feedback.
So the fourth tip for accessing flow for leaders and teams is to eliminate distractions. This can be hard. We know as leaders and as professionals that there's all kinds of demands on our attention. There's our Slack that's constantly ping, ping, ping. There's your 2-year-old who's gonna be tugging at your coattails when you're needing to get that last phone call of the day in. And there's going to be all sorts of things that are competing for your priorities. So what can you do? Put your focus onto one thing. Write down on a post-it note the one thing that you need to get done in the next hour. Place that post-it note in a place that you can see, and you don't let yourself do anything but that one thing until it's complete. You can crumple up that post-it note and throw it away and know that you've done exactly what you need to do to move your team forward.
Yeah, and I would say leaders have so much power to influence this one, and we're either lazy or not aware of that. To big things like how you lay out the office. If you have an open office plan, I'm going to be distracted all the time because people are going to walk by and say, how's it going? How was your weekend? I'm never going to get into that flow unless you want your team to be really creative and have those interactions, and maybe you have half your office like that and half the office where people can actually focus. But honestly, most distractions are leaders. Leaders send us emails, a quick tasker, hey, I need this information. And thinking about when you send those requests for information, those emails, those quick taskers, if it's right in the middle of the day when you know your person's already working on something, they're going to be distracted because their boss, the person who pays them, is asking for something. So they're going to go do that, and then they're going to have to switch back, and they're going to lose that time in transition. So really thinking about how we organize the day for our people, how we organize the office, how we put that into our culture even of, hey, someone's working hard, don't distract them.
Yeah, I love that. Experiencing the sequence in which you do on a 48-hour adventure with us, then you can take that and apply it to how can I sequence my workday to access flow and eliminate distractions when I need to and be dispersed and conversing with others when I want to be creative. So that's tip number 4, eliminating distractions.
All right, tip number 5, embrace the struggle. What I really love about flow is, Mihai did all this research and found some triggers and some ways that people get into flow more easily. But now Stephen Kotler and other people are doing research with fMRI, with testing blood, looking at hormones, and our bodies change. It's not just, I felt good and I was more effective for a little while, that was cool. Our bodies go through dramatic changes, our brains start sending out different waves, we have different hormones in our blood. And you can look at flow as a cycle of different phases. So there's struggle phase, there's release going into flow, there's flow, and then there's recovery. And a great example of this for me, like right when we were starting to research flow, dig into this a couple of years ago, and seeing this as a great opportunity for businesses, I was rock climbing. Sometimes you get this thing called Elvis leg. I've got all the gear on, it's all metal, and it starts like jingling, and my belayer's laughing at me like, hey, are you nervous up there? Like, shut up, no, baby, yes, I am. And I thought, well, wait a second, like maybe this is struggle phase. And maybe if I just release, just start thinking about flow instead of all the things that I'm afraid of or worried about, I can release and go in flow. And just like that, I did. And then all of a sudden I was super calm and moving up. And you look at the chemicals in our brain, I was flooded with cortisol, with stress, with flight or fight, shaking, afraid to move, afraid to fall. And you go through that release, and all of a sudden I have dopamine and an anandamide and norepinephrine, which is just fun to say. And those are in my brain. It's giving me hyper focus. It's taking the fear away, giving me a lot of calm. And I was able to climb really easily. So I think it's great to have that cycle in mind and think like, oh, flow doesn't happen without struggle. I need to be a little bit anxious about my presentation or worried about talking to the board or whatever's coming up as a leader. If you're not feeling a little anxious, then you're not going to be able to get into flow.
And because you know about flow, then you can recognize what's happening in your body and move past that struggle phase. Hold out just a little bit longer in your workday to say, if I just can move past this, another phase is coming where I can really dive in.
And the key also in this cycle is, the last phase is recovery. And for both of us, if we're in that, we started at 6 a.m., we're super excited about whatever project we're working on or researching the next geeky competency that we're excited to talk about on a backpacking trip. And then all of a sudden at 6 p.m. and our significant other or our dog or whoever is like, hey, what are you doing? Like, it's 6 p.m., we need dinner. And you're exhausted. You haven't eaten, you haven't rested, you haven't taken any mental breaks because you're in this hyper-focused, effective state of flow, which is great, but it's not sustainable. So you have to build in recovery. If you're expecting your people, I did these 5 triggers that Cairn Leadership recommended, and my people are in flow all the time. Like, after a while, they're just going to be exhausted. So building in recovery, getting outside, just talking about fun things instead of work things like that are important.
I love that. Moving through the cycle is something we do on a weekend adventure, so you can experience it. And once you know what's happening, you can go back and apply it to your life. So tip number 5, move through the cycle and embrace the struggle.
I'm really excited about this whole series and diving into all these competencies because they are critical for leaders that be successful.
And the pro tips we offer along the way is aimed at giving you something tangible to work with and apply right away in your context.
Yeah, well, I think we should get outside and get to work.
Chop chop.